On today's episode, I give you the 5 guiding principles or laws that must guide every decision that you make in your business if you want any chance of success. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Happy whatever day of the week it is, and I'm so stoked to be back with another Monday episode. I am currently living in monsoon weather. For those of you who know, I live in Montana, and we have the great floods happening right now. The other day on video, I watched a house in Yellowstone get swept away whole into a river, and it's pretty incredible and scary, and a whole lot going on right now. As we got rain the other day, then we got snow at 75 degrees and it's melting, and there's some insane stuff happening right now. And it's just really interesting. And I'm only sharing this because I'm looking out my window and it looks like it's going to rain again. And that was on the top of my head. So I'm good. I'm happy. Things are great. And I was sitting here today meditating on what I wanted to record. And I wanted to bring it back to a book. I wanted to bring it back to one of the most powerful books that I've ever read in my life. It is a book that I reread probably 5 or 6 times a year. It's a book whose author, one of the authors I've had on the podcast. It's a book that guides every decision that I make. It's a book that put frameworks and understanding into how I was operating my business and started to make sense as to why I was achieving what I wanted, and gave me an easy way to hold myself accountable to the things that I want to create. And it's been one of the most impactful books that I've ever read in my life. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, for every entrepreneur in the world, whether you are one, whether you want to be one, or if you want to do anything in the world to help anybody, this book should be required reading before you are ever allowed to make a dollar. So let me start off by giving a quote. And I love this quote in the book. It's on page 11 in the book. It says, "There's nothing wrong with making money, lots of it. In fact, it's just not a goal that will make you successful." And at this point, if you've been listening to me long enough, you've been consuming my content long enough, I probably sound like a broken record. And that's by design. And the reason I sound like a broken record is because if we think about this game of business, I've probably done it all wrong first before I ever learned how to do it right. And when we start understanding that relationships truly beat algorithms, we understand that on the other side of every decision, every transaction, every opt-in, every sale, every word-of-mouth marketing is a human being. And as much as people like to think that people buy products, they like to feel safe and connected to the people they're buying from and to be part of something bigger. And the more that we understand that value wins and making a difference wins, the more money that we'll ever have or ever thought possible will come into our world. But it's not transaction first. It's transformation, then transaction. This book breaks it down. So the incredible book that I'm talking about is the book The Go-Giver by Bob Burg and David Mann. And if you have not listened to my podcast episode with Bob Burg, I highly recommend it. And so today, because this book is so incredible, I'm not going to break down every idea of the book. I'm going to give you the 5 key principles and the 5 key laws the book covers, because it's an easy read. You can read it in a couple hours or listen to it in 2. And if you're listening to this podcast, there's a reason. And here's my invitation, here's my challenge, almost here's my requirement, is that if you're hearing this and you've read it or listened to it, listen to it again. If you have never, go get it right in this instance and give it a listen, give it a read, and give the applications to your business and to your life, because they are a guaranteed recipe for success. And so in this book, they break down the 5 key principles of the Go-Giver approach, right? So the number 1 is the law of value. The number 2 is the law of compensation. The number 3 is the law of influence. Number 4 is the law of authenticity. And number 5 is the law of receptivity. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to read these each to you, because I want you to understand that these 5 laws, these 5 guiding principles should be in front of your face every day, on a sticky note, on the wall. I have the book literally sitting on my desk 6 feet away from me. And I want you to surround yourself with them, because if you use these as guiding principles, there's no way to lose this game that we call business. So let's start with number 1, the law of value. The law of value states that your true worth is determined by how much more you're giving value than you take in payment. So you deliver more value than the payment that you're taking in. It sounds simple, but not very many people do that. So once you read this story, it will tell you more about how you can apply that. And you've heard me for years talk about, I don't win until you win. And what we simply mean by that is that we have to understand that if a human being is coming to us to make a decision and something in their life isn't working, they have a need, something's broken, they want something different, and they don't feel safe to make that decision by telling them that they'll only feel safe if they buy first or that they have to pay us first to get a result, actually makes it harder for them to commit. But when you change the game and you understand that our job isn't to find our customers, it's to help to create our ideal customers. And by creating them, it means creating a relationship, creating a container, creating an environment, creating an experience that meets them where they are and helps them move one step closer to their goal. And you prioritize that over the transaction happens by default. And so the law of value states that your true worth is determined by how much more you're giving value than you take in payment. And that is principle one, law number one of the go-giver approach. Now, law number two, the law of compensation. The law of compensation states that your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So I guess you got to figure out a way or ways to serve more people and serve them well, and that will allow you to grow your business and eventually become more successful. And so when you think about this book, it's called The Go-Giver. It's done by design. But I say this a lot as well. When you think about the law of compensation, it states that your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. It is not determined by how many people you sell and they don't get results. And so if you think about it, you can't find me a $100 million company that's been built on selling a product but nobody getting results. And we say this with customer journey all the time. Your job doesn't end when the transaction occurs. Your job begins with the transaction occurs, because just because they buy a product doesn't mean that they're done. It means that it's begun, and it's our job to ensure that they achieve or have the best chance of succeeding at their desired possible outcome. So law number two is the law of compensation. Your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. Which now brings us to law number three. Law number three is the law of influence. They define the law of influence as your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. So when you take care of people first, they'll take care of you later. And if you do that, you're going to create influence for yourself. You could call this reciprocity, you could call this value, you could call this connection. But really what it does is it prioritizes the most important thing. Because when people come to us and they want to work with us, they want to learn from us, they want to buy from us, what they want is a relationship. They want to know that they can achieve a result. And when you think about your influence being designed around their interests versus yours, your interests are almost guaranteed to be met when you put their interests first. And so that's why we focus so heavily on customer journey. So law number three is the law of influence. Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first, which now brings us to law number four. And law number four, hold on one second. My wife was calling. We're not going to edit this out. But law number four is the law of authenticity. The law of authenticity is the most valuable gift. Hold on. The most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. So the law of authenticity states that the most valuable gift that you have to give is yourself. Be yourself and be your best self, because people like to deal with authentic people and people that are real. If people have got a mask or they have a smoke screen, they won't trust you. And so the best way is to be yourself and be authentic. And if you're a team of one, that's being you. If you're a team of many, it's allowing your employees to be themselves, to put their authenticity into the world and into the creation of relationships with your customers. And so we say this a lot, where everybody has a secret weapon that is typically neglected, and the secret weapon is you. Your application of the things that you do in business, your application of customer journeys, your application of your product into the world is actually your unique gift. I've said before that you should never try to compete on width, because it's a guaranteed lose-lose game. But you can always win at depth, because nobody else can be you. And so the law of authenticity is reminding you that it's your approach, it's your application, it's your thoughts, it's your vision, it's your ideas, and it's your personality applied into the marketplace with whatever you have and whatever you create that makes you unique. And that is one of the greatest gifts that you will ever have when it comes to business and success in business. So law number 4 is the law of authenticity, which brings us to the final law. And the final law is the law of receptivity. And the law of receptivity states that the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. So it's a give and receive relationship. And so in the book, he gives an example. He says you can spend all day exhaling your breath, right? But how long can you exhale without inhaling? So it's a give and receive relationship. And so when you give, you have to stay open to receiving, and that's how it works. The more you give, the more you can receive. The more you're open to receiving, the more that will come in. And so part of this game is understanding that when we lead with value and we prioritize value and we remain open to receiving, we'll receive. And we'll receive in many, many ways that we never thought possible. Whether it's marketing, word of mouth referrals, clients, customers, getting our buckets full, handwritten letters in the mail, stories of how our content has changed other people. But it's very, very important to understand this because for me, the law of receptivity allows me to remind myself to stay in my power, to stay aligned with why I'm doing this. And if you live in a transactional world, you're not open to receive because you're trying to take, you're trying to extract. And that doesn't allow people to give. And in my experience, what I found is that when you put value first, what you receive is 10 times greater than what you could ever try to take with a transaction only. And so I'm going to go back to the quote that I said right when we started the show, because it's one of my most favorite parts of the book, when he simply states, there is nothing wrong with making money and lots of it. In fact, it's just not a goal that will make you successful. And I've seen this play out at scale. I've seen this play at the lowest levels and always to the highest levels. And every company I've ever launched, every product I've ever launched, anything I've consulted or been a part of, where we were focused on the wrong goal of generating revenue rather than generating results for a client and then allowing the revenue to follow, has always ended with the same circumstance. Failure, it stops working, it doesn't work anymore, no one else buys it because it won't actually create the results that we want. Because we create products, we create services, we create offers that make a difference. And the offer itself or the product itself is just a tool to get our customer to the result. But if all we do is focus on selling the tool, but we never focus on creating the journey or the container that helps them achieve the result using that tool, our business will ever grow. It will never have the results that we want, and it will never create the life that we want. And so what I want you to do is I want you as soon as possible, if you've read the book or listened to it, to listen to it again. Because every time I listen to this book or reread this book, I find a different lesson that applies to where I am today. And if you have not listened to this book, if you have not read this book, I'm going to highly recommend and almost require that if you ever want my help, if you ever want to ask me a question, or if you ever want to listen to this podcast again, it should be a barrier of entry so that you listen to it and you can start to change the frame of how we see business and how we see what we do. There's examples in the book, there's stories in the book, and there's ways that you'll be able to apply each and every one of these laws and principles into your life and into your business immediately. And the truth be told, why do I love this book? Why do I teach relationship speed algorithms? Well, it's because I fucking hate to lose. I hate losing. Like more than anything, I hate losing. I hate coming in second. I hate losing a game. I hate not getting results. And so a couple years ago, when I decided like who I want to be in the world and how I want to run my business, I decided that I wanted to make it a win-win game. And what's so beautiful is when I found this book, I realized that the only guaranteed outcome of living by these laws and principles is winning, because there is no way to lose. It is a win-win game no matter which way you slice it. And so I'm going to read the 5 laws for you one more time by definition, and then we're going to wrap the show, and you're going to go get the book, find the book, re-listen to the book, reread the book, or grab it for the first time and start applying these principles immediately. So the 5 laws or the 5 principles of the Go-Giver approach. Number 1, the law of value. It states that your true worth is determined by how much more you're giving value than you take in payment. Law number 2, the law of compensation. Your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. Law number 3, the law of influence. Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Law number 4, the law of authenticity. The most valuable gift that you can give and that you have to offer is yourself. And then law number 5, which is the law of receptivity. The key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. And these laws, these principles, these guiding lights are a guaranteed path to winning the game. It stacks the deck in your favor, and it ensures that the only possible outcome that you can create is success. And so the book is The Go-Giver by John David Mann and Bob Burg. And we also have an episode where I interviewed Bob Burg on the podcast, which my team will link in the notes below. Go find it. But today, my assignment is really, really simple. Go grab the book, read the book, and the moment you're done, shoot me a message on Instagram or wherever you would like and tell me what your biggest takeaway was from the book, and start applying these principles into your life and into your business today. But for now, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go clean up the kitchen floor because our dishwasher flooded and I got to change the wood floor. I'm going to make sure that I don't get washed away in all the rain and the floods that we're having. And I'm going to go apply these principles into my marriage and into my family with my kids in my life. And I will see you guys in the next episode, or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, remember the most important part, that relationships will always beat algorithms. So I'll see you next time. Have a beautiful day. And now let's cue the outro.